Jim Van Allen tell us what space is. Most of us have been brought up in the tradition that space was a vacuum, a place where there was nothing. Well, we've got to redo our thinking about that, haven't we, Jim?
Well, I should certainly say so. It's a very common term, the cold vacuum of outer space, as though that were the place where there was absolutely nothing. Now, the more we go out and look there, the more we investigate the conditions in outer space, the more we realize how vastly false that is. And there's probably nature's most interesting natural laboratory on an immense scale. And all the atomic processes, molecular processes, the vast variety of radiations in outer space, I think will be a major field of human endeavor during the next century. It's far from being empty.
Well, what is out there, Jim?
Well, in the first place, of course, we've known for a long time that the radiations from the sun are streaming through outer space, from the sun to the earth. We know that starlight comes through outer space, and all of these things, of course, have been known since the beginnings of astronomy, perhaps the beginnings of human observation of the heavens in the most primitive sense, although perhaps not understood on quite the same level that they are now. But now, in the last few years, we find that the region around the Earth, what we might generally call interplanetary space, the region among and between the planets, is literally filled with particles, protons, neutrons, electrons, all of the particles probably that we know in the laboratory. And they're streaming around with high velocities and high energies. In addition to that, there are many traces of residual magnetic fields associated with these clouds of gas and clouds of particles. In fact, I think Sidney Chapman's view that the Earth is really within the sun's atmosphere is a very illuminating way to look at it, and is really right.
Where do most of these particles come from? Do we know that yet?
Well, I think the sun is far and away the most important source of the particles flying around in outer space. Of course, there are cosmic rays, and they doubtless come not only from the sun, and an occasional great burst from the sun, but primarily from other stars.
It seems to me that in the public view of space, there's been a great deal of overemphasis on manned spaceflight. And to myself, some years ago, I felt that man was a fairly useless thing in space, except as an experimental animal, or if he ultimately landed somewhere. What is your view on this?
Well, I tend to share that view. Because having a man go to another planet is a vastly interesting human enterprise, and there's no doubt about that. And I think in due time that certainly should be done and will be immensely interesting to the human race. I personally feel we're pushing the matter rather prematurely. I think it's like Scott going to the South Pole with donkeys or mules or ponies, I believe it was. That's right. Ponies. Compared to the method by which we attack the Antarctic at the present time. So I think we're at the present stage, we're trying to go to the moon on a pony rather than waiting for an icebreaker, let's say. And meanwhile, I personally feel that a man is an immense nuisance in trying to do any sort of scientific measurements in the present scale of things, and we can do vastly better with electronic instruments. Well, I think we're in the era of the scientific exploration of space now, and I feel that's where the emphasis should properly lie, and making civil and commercial applications, let us say, as rapidly as the technology permits. Now, insofar as putting a man in space, I'm all for that in the long term, but I think it has received very much too great an emphasis in the present era.
So far as I'm concerned, this is in the realm of science fiction. But
and the point is,
I mean, this
to get back to manned spaceflight, man is a very difficult thing to sterilize. You can't boil him at 140 degrees centigrade, whereas instruments you can.
Wouldn't be bad if we could, some of them, but we can't be selective about that.